Good evening and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It's been a little bit of a hiatus since my last episode, did my Super Bowl reaction episode the Monday after Super Bowl. So been a little bit of hiatus. I did put out on my social medias last week about a mailbag episode. Did get some results or some questions, so I will do a portion of this show as a mailbag episode. First things first, this is Sports Talk on a Budget. Like I said, you could find it on if you prefer the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or basically wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and subscribe to the show on all those podcasts or wherever you listen to. And then, of course, if you prefer the video version, it is here on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget as well. Please like and subscribe to the show. And if you have a constructive comment, please leave one. I don't mind constructive criticism either. But as I mentioned last week on my social medias, I did put out that I was taking questions, and this would be somewhat of a mailbag episode. Didn't get enough questions for a full mailbag episode, so it'll be a partial mailbag episode. Do have a couple other topics I want to touch on in this show as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the topics of the show. So, as I mentioned, this will be a mailbag episode. That'll be my second topic. My first topic, I'm going to get into the news that dropped last week of the college football playoff updating their system to a 5+7 model, 5 auto bid, 7 at large, and going over the schedule, what it's going to look like for the 2024-2025 college football playoff season. So getting into that, I want to talk a little bit about what that structure looks like, and just the schedule next year and how it's going to break down and what that kind of means for the college football playoff, and if this is a structure that would be sustainable going forward as well. Second topic of the day, as I mentioned before, that is when I'm going to jump into my mailbag. I do have about 5 or 6 questions that I will get to and talk about different. It comes from some of my friends, some family, people from different states as well, different sports topics as well. It's not just going to be football, even though this is mainly a football-dominated show. There is some questions that aren't just football-related. And then finally, I'm going to end my show with my rankings for the offensive skills position players or offensive position players for this NFL draft. I'm going to break down the quarterbacks, top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 wide receiver, top 5 pass catchers, so wide receivers and tight ends, and then top 5 running backs and top 5 offensive linemen, both interior and exterior as well. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the show. It is February 27th, year of our Lord 2023. Let's go ahead and dive into the show. So as I mentioned last week, the news drop. Obviously, if you're a football fan, college football fan, either one, you've probably already heard this news, but I kind of wanted to break it down a little bit more. College football playoff was going to be a 6+6 format for the next 2 years before it expires in 2026, and they're currently working on a new format for the college football playoff. But they decided for the next 2 years, they're going to move to a 5+7 model. So that means 5 at-large teams will get in, 5 automatic bids will get into the top 5 conference champions. So you'll most likely have the Big Four, the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, and ACC, and then probably someone from the American, WAC, MAC, Mountain West Conference. Depends on where a Sun Belt Conference, depending on who's the highest ranked. Last year would have been Liberty, who is from Conference USA, so that would have been something a little bit different as well. So you'll have the top 5 conference champions will get automatic bids into the college football playoff next year, and there'll be 7 at-large teams. And there's no guarantee how many are going to come from each conference. There's no number auto bids for the Big Ten or the SEC, even though they'll probably dominate these playoffs, at least for seeding and teams-wise. But that's how it's going to break down. And they kind of had to do this because of what happened to the Pac-12. So it was going to be a 6+6 model where you had the top 6 conference champions, but that really didn't make sense now that it's a Power 4, not a Power 5, with the Pac-12 dissolving and teams going to the Big Ten, to the ACC, and of course the Big 12 as well. So had to go to that 5+7 model. Do I love automatic bids to conference champions? I don't know if I love it, but I think it's something that they really thought that they had to do because they wanted to make sure that everybody was kind of included and not just the big boys. Because if you just rank the top 12 teams, especially if you look at last year, if you just rank the top 12 teams, I want to say 10 of the 12 teams were going to be in the Big Ten or the SEC. They would have been new Big Ten and SEC, a couple of them like Washington, Oregon, and Texas, and even Oklahoma as well. They would have been new SEC and Big Ten members. But if you think about it going forward, it's probably going to be mostly SEC and Big Ten, and especially if you take out the automatic bids for 5 conference champions, you're probably going to see mostly SEC and Big Ten, and you pretty much can just eliminate the group of 5 at that point. So they want to include the group of 5, and until we have a group of 5 playoff and they kind of split off from the Power 4, they're going to have to try to include the group of 5 in some capacity, because if they're going to say that all 134 FBS teams are created equal, which we all know is not true and has never been remotely true, if they're going to say that all 34 teams are created equal, then they're going to have to try to create some sort of equal playoff. We all know, if you're a college football fan, that doesn't exist, and the belief that all 34 FBS teams are created equal and play equal schedules and have equal rosters and equal opportunities at their universities is a joke, and it's always been a joke. But just wanted to kind of go over the schedule for next year, because that's where I'm going to get excited. I think this schedule next year is going to be huge. You start with the first round. The first game is actually December 20th, and the first round is played on campus. So it'll be on campus to the higher seeds. You'll have one game Friday, December 20th. Then you'll have 3 games Saturday, December 21st. One early afternoon, one late afternoon, and one evening game. That's huge, because a lot of times the college football playoff has been played on like Thursdays. And a lot of times, it's around New Year's Day, so it does help out. But then they end up playing the championship on a random Monday. That is still going to happen. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I love that they're capitalizing on Friday night and Saturday. And then that's going to lead into a full slate of NFL games on Sunday. So you're going to have Thursday, maybe not a Thursday night game that late in the season for the NFL, but you'll have a Friday night game, first round of playoff games, 3 Saturday games. And I love that they're bringing the campus effect into this, because, could you imagine what a whiteout at Penn State would look like for a playoff game, or an LSU atmosphere, or Neyland Stadium, Autzen Stadium, the Horseshoe, the Big House, all these unbelievable campuses and unbelievable atmospheres that you'll be able to see as playoff games. I think it's huge. I love that they're having that be the first round, and you're rewarding the teams that do have the higher seeds, that did have a better record during the regular season, with home playoff games. And I think that's huge. And I think the spectacle, obviously, when you get late into the season, those arenas and those campus games are still huge. And most Saturdays in the fall, whether you go to an LSU game, you go to a Penn State game, you go to probably 90% of the college football teams within the country, you're going to get crazy atmospheres. But I'm hoping and I'm thinking that these playoff atmospheres will bring just a whole nother element to these atmospheres. And now you're going to have, like I said, just unbelievable campus atmospheres in these first round games. And 3 on Saturday is going to be huge. 1 on Friday night will be huge. And I think that that's really going to help college football build even bigger and build an even bigger brand within the footprint of American sports. Then we move to the second round. The second round is going to be right around New Year's Day. So we have a game that's going to be Tuesday night, December 31st, so New Year's Eve night, and that'll be played in the Fiesta Bowl. Then we have 3 games played on Wednesday, January 1st, so New Year's Day, and that is the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl are all going to be playoff games. I still love that they're incorporating the bowls, because these bowls are synonymous with college football, and I think just getting rid of the bowls and getting, especially these major bowls, I think is not something that college football should do, because as someone who's been a college football fan my entire life, I've loved watching these bowl games, and I think it's maybe not the same because now it's a playoff, but I still think it's something you're going to be able to give these teams something when they win. They're going to get, the Fiesta Bowl trophy, the Rose Bowl trophy, the Sugar Bowl trophy. You get to watch the Rose Bowl setting on New Year's Day, which is one of the best settings on all the sports, not just football or college football. So love that they're still incorporating the bowls. So Fiesta Bowl will be Tuesday, December 31st, New Year's Eve night. And then Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, and Sugar Bowl will be played Wednesday, January 1st. It'll be like early afternoon, late afternoon, evening, just like the Saturday in the first round. And then we go to the semifinals. And the semifinals are on a Thursday and Friday. The first semifinal is Thursday, January 9th, and that is going to be the Orange Bowl. So we still have the Orange Bowl incorporated, which I think is huge, like I already mentioned. Friday, January 10th is going to be the Cotton Bowl. So both bowls are still taken care of there. As you could see, Thursday, Friday, they most likely did that because NFL is playing Saturday games at that point. That'll probably be the last weekend for the NFL. So Saturday games for the NFL, you don't want to go up against the NFL. Even though this is a semifinal for your first college football playoff, you're probably not going to beat whatever the NFL puts out. The NFL puts out anything and pretty much just wipes out the competition. So you don't want to do that. That's why you have Thursday, Friday games. So Thursday, January 9th is the Orange Bowl, which is a semifinal. Friday, January 10th, both night games, of course, is the Cotton Bowl, which is another semifinal. Then finally, I don't love this. I wish this would be played on Saturday, January 18th, but it's played on Monday, January 20th. And that is going to be the championship game. I wish this was played on January 18th. I know that's going to be the wild card round weekend for the NFL, but you could talk to the NFL, get in the room in the NFL and be like, hey, you guys could take either the morning or the early afternoon game and the late afternoon, give us the evening, or we'll take the early afternoon game. You get the late afternoon and the evening, but we want to play on Saturday because this is college football. We play on Saturday, and that's what we do. But they're keeping it on Monday. I really hope when this expires in 2026 and they come with the new model, I really hope that the championship game is played on Saturday. But either way, the championship game will be played on Monday, January 20th. So there's your schedule for the college football playoff. Like I said, 5+7 model, 5 conference champions, automatic qualifiers, and 7 at-large bids. This will expire in 2026, and there's already been talk about a new model coming. There's also been talk about expansion to 14, which I don't love. I think 12 is a good number. I actually thought 6 or 8 were better numbers, but I think 12 is where we need to stop. This isn't This isn't college basketball. College basketball, I love college basketball, but I love college basketball because of March Madness, and that has really dominated college basketball, and it's kind of rendered college basketball's regular season as basically unimportant to most sports fans. Don't do that to college football. College football has the best regular season of any sport anywhere. Don't ruin the regular season just to get a better playoff, just to make more money off more playoff games. So stay at 12. You've already went to 12. You can't go back to 8 or 6. I think you can, but they won't. Stay at 12. I think that's a good model. And also, play your damn championship game on a Saturday. This is college football after all. But like I said, that's the model, 5+7. I'm really excited for those first-round games on campus. I love that they're still incorporating the bowls for the second and third rounds. And I love that you look at that semifinal weekend, we're going to have a game Thursday night. We're going to have a game Friday night. We're going to have NFL Saturday, NFL Sunday. It's going to be a full weekend of football. I just love that. Maybe even a Monday night game as well for the NFL. Love that. And December is going to be off the hook when it comes to football, both for the college football and the NFL. December, mid-December to early January is just going to be awesome for football. And football is basically taken over as the no doubt biggest sport in America right now. But let's go ahead and move to my second topic, and that is going to be my mailbag part. So I have some questions here from friends and family, and I wanted to kind of get to that here. So we're going to start off with my good friend Justin Warquez. I've actually had him on the show last year. Me and him previewed the NBA playoffs last year. So familiar face. If you want to go back and watch that episode, it is uploaded both for the audio version on all my podcast stations and also on YouTube as well if you want to get more familiar with him. But he had 3 questions for me, and I'll go ahead and answer his 3 questions. First one is actually going to be an NBA question because me and him, he's more of an NBA fan, but I still like the NBA, and that's mostly what we talk about when we're together, actually. And his first question is, who are your top 2 picks to come out of the Eastern Conference and Western Conference for the NBA? So who are my top 2 title contenders out of each conference? I'll go ahead and start in the Western Conference, and my number 1 contender in the Western Conference is going to be the defending champion Denver Nuggets. Jokic is still probably the best player in the league. Jamal Murray is a really good number 2, and they actually have some decent depth. I like Michael Porter Jr. Aaron Gordon is just a good defensive player. They have decent depth coming off of the bench with guys like Christian Brown and KCP. So I really like this Denver team. They're battle-tested now. They, of course, are the defending champions, so they've been there, done that. And Jokic is just a guy, he's a unicorn. He's someone that you can't stop. He's the guy that he can do everything. He can go out and drop 30 and also have, 15 rebounds and 10 assists as well. So Jokic he's just a matchup nightmare for anybody. And I don't really know if any team out there has a guy that can consistently stop Jokic. So that's why I like the Nuggets in the West as my number 1 contender. Number 2 contender might surprise some people, but I have the Los Angeles Clippers. And the Clippers have been playing really good ball, especially since they got James Harden. It was a little bit rough out the gate. They did not win a lot of games at first with James Harden, but now they found a flow. Tyronn Lue is one of the most underrated coaches in all the NBA, but they found a flow. And I mean, when you have the firepower of guys like James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard is actually playing games this year and looks like the Kawhi Leonard that was in San Antonio and was the one that went to Toronto and was basically the mercenary to get them their first and only championship. So just a ton of firepower there. You have Russell Westbrook coming off the bench. You still have other guys like Terrence Mann that can contribute and make good plays as role players as well. But this team, I know the Clippers are kind of snake bitten a little bit. You just can't really trust them in the playoffs, but I really like the direction of this team. And I think if they can stay healthy, which was always a question mark for guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they're a team that can make a run, and maybe they can give the Nuggets a run for their money as well. And then we'll go ahead and move to the Eastern Conference. And my number one contender is the team with the best record, not just in the East, but in the NBA, and that's the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, I believe, have the best starting five when you go Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think any team in the NBA can boast a better starting five than that. They don't have a great bench, only about Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard that really contribute off the bench. But when you get into the postseason, your bench starts to shrink a little bit. You really only play about 7-8 guys max in the postseason, and give me a better five and give me a better seven than that than you're going to see from most teams. This, of course, this Celtics team has played in multiple conference finals in the last 3-4 years. They played in the finals 2 years ago and took the Warriors to 6. They're a team that has been there and has been around the title for years now. This is their opportunity to get back to the NBA Finals, and I think them and Denver would be an unbelievable series. My number 2 contender, I've been back and forth, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Milwaukee Bucks. The reason I have the Milwaukee Bucks is you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's one of the 3 best players in the NBA. Damian Lillard he's still one of the most clutch players in the NBA, one of the best shooters in the NBA. So I think, yes, that hasn't been a match made in heaven yet. And getting Doc Rivers as head coach, I don't know if I love that or hate that. He has experience, but he also has a lot of poor experience when it comes to the playoffs. But they're still a team that has a lot of firepower, and I just like them over teams like the Knicks, like the Cavaliers. Without Embiid, the Sixers, I don't think have a chance. I don't know what to expect out of the Heat. They always seem to kind of come on late and then make a run during the playoffs. Maybe they do that again this year. I don't see it, but wouldn't be shocked if it happened. But as of right now, my number 1 would, of course, be the Celtics, and then I'll go ahead and roll with the Bucks, but as the best of not great options as that number 2 option. I really think the Celtics should win the East, and if they don't, it's a major disappointment. Then he actually had a question coming from Major League Baseball, and he asked me, what do you think the Dodgers' chances of getting to a World Series title are this next season or the next few seasons? I think the Dodgers have the best chance to get the World Series title, and they should have the best chance. They went out and spent, like the Yankees under George Steinbrenner, they went out and spent a ton of money, got Shohei Ohtani, got Yamamoto, got Tyler Glasnow, got Teoscar Hernandez. They went out and just signed and paid a ton of money. And in my opinion, if they don't get at least to the World Series next year or at least in the next 2 years, it is a major disappointment. And if you look back at this Dodgers squad, especially under Dave Roberts, they've got 1 World Series championship. Yes, it was in a COVID-shortened season. I don't put an asterisk next to it, but it just needs to be mentioned that it was in a COVID-shortened season. But they've had so many chances to win the World Series. Yes, you could say they got cheated out in 2017 against Houston Astros, but so many opportunities, so many early exits that were disappointing. If they don't get to at least the World Series in these next 2 years, it is a major disappointment, and you might be looking for a new head coach or a new manager at that point if you're the Dodgers. So, yeah, I think they have a great chance of getting to the World Series, and they should get to the World Series at least in the next 2 years, and they probably should win the World Series in the next 2 years as well. And then last one that he has for me is in the NFL, so he made sure to cover the major 3 sports. Which teams, in your opinion, can stand up and threaten a potential Chiefs three-peat, not repeat, he put repeat, but three-peat next season? And I have a couple of teams. I have 3 teams I think that could stand up and maybe potentially put the stop a three-peat from the Kansas City Chiefs. One is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are the only team outside of a Tom Brady-led team that has been able to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, not just in the regular season where they're 3-0 in the regular season, but in the postseason and beat them. When we, what was that, in 2021, when Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals went into Arrowhead Stadium, beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and then 2 years ago, they took them right to the edge in the AFC Championship game again. Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow aren't afraid of the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not afraid to. They probably talk a little bit too much smack going into those games, but they're not afraid of this Chiefs team, and I think they can definitely take it to them. Now, a big question mark for the Bengals is going to be health for Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow isn't healthy, then it is going to be difficult for them to do this. But I think they're the best opportunity or best shot in the AFC to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, because it just seems like when it comes to teams like Baltimore with Lamar Jackson or Buffalo with Josh Allen, I think it's just in their heads a little bit, especially the quarterbacks' heads. You're looking at the other side and you're looking at Patrick Mahomes, you're looking at Andy Reid, and it gets in their heads a little bit, and I think that gets them off their game and gets the coaches off their game. They don't call a game exactly how they should be because they're trying to just beat the ghost of both of those players, both of those guys as well. So that's why I think the Bengals are the best threat in the AFC. In the NFC, I actually have two teams, and they're young and up-and-coming teams that I think can really make a run this next year, and that one is going to be the Detroit Lions. The reason I have the Detroit Lions is because they went in their opening night and beat the Chiefs. Yes, I know Chris Jones and Travis Kelce were out, and it was a long time ago since then, but this is a young and up-and-coming team that just keeps getting better. Their offense is set. They have a really good running game with both Montgomery and Gibbs. You have good pass catchers in St. Brown, and Laporta really came on this year. Your offensive line is really good and can slow down a guy like Chris Jones, who really kind of wrecked the game against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And if they can get a little bit better on defense, especially in the pass game, their run defense is actually pretty stout. I think they could really challenge this Kansas City Chiefs team. And then my last one is actually going to be a little bit out of left field, and that is the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers were a team that I didn't expect too much from this year, especially with Jordan Love, his first year starting, but they're so young. They have young receivers, they have young tight ends, and they seem to have hit on about 5 of those guys at tight end and wide receiver. Jordan Love is going to have another year under his belt. He's going to continue to develop and get better. Their defense does need to get better, especially in the secondary. They need to kind of retain Jair Alexander, get better on the offensive line as well. But this is a team, Jordan Love seems to be that guy. They went into Dallas and handed it to Dallas, and they gave San Francisco all they could handle, and probably should have beat San Francisco in the divisional round. So they're unafraid, they're young, they're unafraid, they're unimpressionable. They're just going to go in and play ball, and I think that could really bode well against the Kansas City Chiefs team, who seems to be able to win the game before the game is even played, just by the intimidation factor of who they are. So those are the 3 teams I would have. It's the Cincinnati Bengals, the Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. And then we'll go ahead and move over to my next question. This is from my cousin DJ Jolan, actually, and he asked, what 3 quarterbacks go first in the 2024 NFL draft? What order do they go in, and how big of a skill gap does one have above the other? Now, I'm going to get into this a little bit more later when I break down the positions on the offensive side, but the way I see it, the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft, number 1 is Caleb Williams, number 2, I have Jaden Daniels, and number 3, I have Drake May. And that's how I see it going in the first round. I think that actually ends up being the first 3 picks. I think Chicago takes Caleb Williams and moves on from Justin Fields and trades him. And I think the Commanders, they may end up taking Drake May. I will have them mock drafted. I'll have them in my mock draft taking Jaden Daniels, and then I'll have the Patriots taking Drake May. And when I look at this, the skill gap, I think between 1 and 2 is larger than 2 and 3. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a USC fan. I've talked about that in previous shows, but I've watched basically every single snap that Caleb Williams has had at USC these last 2 years, even the ones on the Pac-12 network. I've watched basically every single snap, and he does things at the quarterback position that a lot of guys can't do. The arm angles that he uses, his escapability, he is very accurate both in the pocket and on the run. And he is a guy, I think his potential and his ceiling is just that much higher than the other 2 players. And that's why he's at number 1, and I think it's a decent gap. What I don't love that Caleb Williams does sometimes, he plays a lot of hero ball and always tries to make the big play. Usually that's because the defense for USC has given up 40 plus points a game. And there's actually a stat in the losses that Caleb Williams has had in the last 2 years. The USC defense has given up an average of 43 points in those games. So I understand him playing hero ball and trying to make the big play, but he can make any kind of throw, whether it's long, short, intermediate, makes any kind of throw. He's very elusive, thick, strong guy. He's not the tallest guy, but he's a very thick, strong guy, gets out of tackles, and he's a guy that sees the field very well. So there's a lot that Caleb Williams does well, and there's not a lot that he doesn't do well. And that's, I think, the biggest gap that I see between these three players. Next, I have Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I think Jaden Daniels' ceiling is better than Drake May. Jaden Daniels reminds me a lot of what Lamar Jackson was coming out of Louisville. Now, he's not the runner and the athlete that Lamar Jackson is, because Lamar Jackson's just on a whole nother level as a runner. But Jaden Daniels is the next best thing and probably the best running quarterback to come out of college since Lamar Jackson. But what he's better at than Lamar Jackson coming out of college is he's a better thrower of the football. He's a really good deep ball thrower. Now, his accuracy on the move isn't great, but he's actually pretty decent inside the pocket as well. So Jaden Daniels, I think, is a guy who has a really big ceiling. He's a little slender. I would like him to put on about 15 to 20 pounds, but he's still about 6'4", tall. He can see the field and is a dynamic athlete and is a playmaker. Drake May, I have as a third, and like I said, it's close between him and Jaden Daniels, but the thing with me and the thing I have with Drake May is when you watch him, and I've watched a decent amount, not a lot, but I've watched a decent amount of North Carolina football in the last couple of years when he was a starter. It's just inconsistent. There's games where it's like, dang, this guy should be the number one pick in the draft, or at least he should be challenging Caleb Williams for the number one pick in the draft. And then there's games it's like, shoot, is this guy the fourth or fifth best quarterback in this draft? And is he a second round pick? Just inconsistent. His accuracy on the run is not great. He does have a good size arm, not a great arm, but a really good arm. Very mechanical at times as well, but just can be erratic, can be inconsistent, needs to clean up his play. Did not have a great supporting cast around him at North Carolina, but still was very inconsistent at times. I think he needs to clean up a lot of things, but his potential is great, and that's why I think he'll still end up being a top 10 pick, but really needs to clean up a lot of things. And so that's how I see it. That's how I see the skill gap. I think there's a bigger gap between 1 and 2 than 2 and 3. And then I have two more questions. One is actually from my wife, Jennifer, and she actually asked two questions. So her first question is, you're at a bar, you accidentally bump into someone and spill their drink. What football player would you not want it to be? And wanted to look at this a couple different ways. Me and her actually talked about this. So I'm going to look at it from active players and non-active players, and players I wouldn't want to mess with, and players I wouldn't want my first impression to be, I just spilled your drink and ran into you at some random bar. Who are you, dude? And so the first one is going to be active players I just wouldn't want to mess with. And number one is going to be Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald seems like a nice guy, but he's built like looked like he was chiseled out of the side of a mountain, basically. Wouldn't want to bump into him and knock over his drink. So that is one guy there. Former players, I have two, and that's Ndamukong Suh and James Harrison. Ndamukong Suh is one of the dirtiest players of this last generation and is a huge guy. I mean, if you watched him play in college against Colt McCoy when he's basically tossing Colt McCoy around like a rag doll, I'm probably about the same size as Colt McCoy. He probably would be able to toss me around like a rag doll. So I wouldn't want to bump into him, and he's a big dude. I wouldn't want to mess with him. And James Harrison, he seems like a nice-ish guy, but it seems like he's got a very big, mean side, and he is a monster as well. All you have to do is go look on Instagram or other places on social media under James Harrison, and just look at the insane workouts this guy does, and it would just be it's unreal to watch, and he is just an unbelievable specimen. He's a guy I would not want to bump into and spill anything on him, because that'd be tough. That would be really tough, and I wouldn't want to get in any kind of fight or altercation with him. And then guys, I just wouldn't want that to be their first impression. And of course, as you can see behind me with the Patriots flag, I wouldn't want that to be my first impression with Tom Brady. And on the other side, I wouldn't want that to be my first impression with David Ortiz. Those two are basically my all-time two favorite players, especially from Boston as well. I don't want that to be my first impression meeting them. I think they're both nice guys and think it would go over decently and go over well, but I still don't want that to be my first impression. I'm just, some random dude that bumped into them, spilled their drink. I would probably offer to buy them a drink, even though their net worth is 10 times mine, even probably more. but still just try to be a nice guy and offer them a drink. But either way, I wouldn't want to be that to be my first impression. And then her second question is, in all your lifetime, what was your favorite or top 3 sports moments that you were either the part of or watched? It can be from any time watching college or professional games. So I'm going to go from games that I watched instead of like moments that I was a part of playing, just because it's a little bit harder for me to remember that. And I haven't played sport. I haven't played like organized sports outside of like adult leagues in a very long time. And no one wants to hear about my adult leagues. So first one and number one for me is going to be right here with the Red Sox, and it's 0-4. And not the 0-4 winning of the World Series. It's the comeback against the Yankees. You go down 3-0. You lose that game like 18-6 in game 3. No one gave you a shot. Not just that you came back from 3-0 and you're the only team in MLB history to come back from 3-0 to win the series, but you did it against the Yankees, the team that has been obviously your biggest rival and just the biggest thorn in your side for 86 years as you had waited between World Series titles. So that is my number one moment, is going to be that 0-4 comeback in the ALCS. The other one for me is going to be a Patriots one, and that is going to be the Super Bowl against the Falcons. Coming back from 28-3, I was with my family. I was with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, but I was with my wife, and just couldn't watch a lot of moments because it was just hard. It was just gut wrenching, and it was tough watching a lot of moments. But just one of those games I've watched back. I've watched that game. I've probably rewatched that game about 7-8 times, and it's just, you remember all the moments. You remember just the euphoria of every big play, the Edelman catch, the 2-point conversions, the drive in overtime. You remember all those big plays, and it was just an unbelievable moment in my life. And so those would be my top 2 moments. My number 3 moment, I've had to kind of think about this for a while. I wanted to think about college sports, whether it was USC, other North Carolina, other places like that. Wanted to kind of think about that, but I kind of just went back to the Patriots and back to another Super Bowl, and that is the Malcolm Butler catch. I was with some friends and family when that happened as well. You're thinking on the 1-yard line, they're going to hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. They're going to score a touchdown. The game's going to be over with, and you just lost another Super Bowl in an unbelievable fashion. And Malcolm Butler makes what I still believe as the best play in Super Bowl history and wins that game for the New England Patriots. Gets Tom Brady his 4th. They get over that time where they couldn't win Super Bowls after losing a couple to the Giants. Just a euphoric moment. I just remember being in my cousin's backyard, just jumping around, yelling, screaming. It was just an unbelievable moment. And one of those moments, I actually have a picture frame of the catch of Malcolm Butler making the interception. Unbelievable moment. One of those moments I'll always remember. So those are my top 3. One from the Red Sox. Number 1 is the 0-4 season, the 0-4 comeback in the ALCS. And then the Falcons Super Bowl and the Seahawks Super Bowl, most importantly, the Malcolm Butler catch. And then my last one is actually from a buddy of mine. His name is Zach Law. We went to OCC together, and we actually worked on the OCC student newspaper together as well. And his question is very simple. Who's winning the Super Bowl? Who's your Super Bowl pick in 2025? I'll go ahead and lay out my top 3. I'm going to go ahead and lay out my top 5 contenders, and I'll give you who I really think is going to win. Top 5 contenders, of course, the Chiefs are going to be 1. I have the Bengals at number 2. The 49ers at number 3. That roster is still elite. The Detroit Lions at number 4, and the Green Bay Packers at number 5. And if you had to kind of push me to make a bet right now, I'm going to go ahead and bet on either the Cincinnati Bengals to win the Super Bowl next year, or it's a plus 23. It's a 23-1 bet right now, but I really like the Green Bay Packers direction right now, and I really think they could be a team to make a run next year. The NFC is still not great, and this could be an opportunity for them to really make a run. So my top 5, like I said, would be Chiefs, Bengals, Lions, Niners, Packers. And if I had to pick right now, I'm going to go ahead and roll with... Fuck it, let's roll with the Lions. I know I had the Bengals and my and the Packers as my top 2 contenders, but let's roll with the Lions. They should have been in the Super Bowl this year. They have a really good team that's just getting better. It's a young team that's just getting better. And I think Dan Campbell maybe is a little bit less aggressive in big moments in the playoffs next year. So I'm going to roll with the Lions as my Super Bowl pick in 2025. And then we'll go ahead and move to my last topic, and I'll try to make it quick. Not a huge breakdown here for these players, but I want to make it. I wanted to kind of go over this, And this will kind of highlight the question from DJ as well from earlier. These are my top 5 offensive players by position in the 2024 NFL draft. You already kind of heard my order for the quarterbacks, at least my top 3. So I have Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May 3. That's USC, LSU, North Carolina. My number 4 overall quarterback is going to be Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. I just love the way he throws the deep ball. Experienced player, has played in a lot of big games, a lot of big moments. We'll have to see what happens with the medicals because of his 2 ACL injuries in college and see how those come back, but really good player. And then my number 5 is going to be Bo Nix. Set the record for most starts in college football history as a guy who really grew up moving from Auburn, Oregon, really adapted, really matured, really kind of upped his game. And he's one of those guys, he's just a quick decision maker, gets the ball out of his hand quick, and is very accurate as well. And then my honorable mention is going to be J.J. McCarthy. I just haven't seen enough of J.J. McCarthy make those plays in those moments, because when it came down to big moments and big plays for Michigan, it was Blake Corum, it was Donovan Edwards. It wasn't exactly, or it was their defense. It wasn't exactly J.J. McCarthy. I think he's got a lot of the requisite skills, but I think he's a guy that's going to need to develop and maybe sit a year or 2 behind a veteran starter. Running back, this is not a great running back draft like last year when you had Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, but still some guys I think that can really make some noise in the NFL, probably in the 2nd or 3rd round. You have Jonathan Brooks from Texas. Now, the ACL injury does kind of scare you a little bit, but he'll have some time to recover. Blake Corum from Michigan, one of the best overall players in college football these last couple of years, and is just a guy who has a nose for the end zone and has a nose for getting yards, and is a good all-around back, whether it's out of the backfield catching it or running in between the tackles as well. Trey Benson is a really good speed guy, but is also decent between the tackles as well, and that's from Florida State. Bucky Irving is probably the best receiving back in this draft as well, and he can also run well between the tackles, was really productive at Oregon. Audric Estime is your classic Notre Dame running back, hard-nosed, short yardage, goal line, just tough running back, but he actually has decent speed to break off big runs as well. And then my honorable mention is going to be Marshawn Lloyd, the running back from USC. He's a really good running back in the pass game, really good between the tackles, better speed than you think, just good all-around running back as well. And then next category, I'm going to go pass catchers, not just wide receivers or tight ends. I'm going to go total pass catchers. We have Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver from Ohio State. Of course, anybody who's watched college football knows about Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the just cleanest, best prospects probably ever, one of the top prospects ever when it comes to wide receivers. He runs good routes. He has good hands. He has good speed. He has good size. He's about 6'3", 6'4". There's just really nothing this guy can't do at the wide receiver position. Then we have Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia, and he's one of the best prospects at tight end that I've ever seen, really. He's more of a complete tight end than Kyle Pitts was a couple years ago. He's a better inline blocker than Kyle Pitts was. He can block. He can catch out the backfield. He's really good after the catch. I kind of look at him as a lot like a George Kittle, but I think he's even faster than George Kittle and a better prospect than George Kittle was coming out of Iowa. Then we have Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington. This guy was super productive with Michael Penix Jr., one of the best deep threats in the game. Big guy, 6'3", great hands, and great ball skills. He can go up and get any catch, any ball. Him and Michael Penix Jr. of Washington this past year and even the year before were just deadly. They were just deadly, and I think if Rome Odunze can get in the right situation, I think he could be a really, really top-level wide receiver in this league. Then we have Malik Neighbors from LSU, who probably should have been the Biletnikoff Award winner. But either way, Malik Neighbors, him and Jaden Daniels were great this year. Great speed, great hands. He's good after the catch. He's a guy who could take it the distance. In most drafts, he might be your number one wide receiver, but behind Rome Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be tough. But most drafts, he might be your number one wide receiver. Very productive these last couple of years at LSU. And just a really good, like I said, speed guy, yards after the catch, but was also good in the short and intermediate and has really good hands as well. And then finally, I have Keon Coleman, the wide receiver from Florida State. He was the transfer from Michigan State. He is your classic deep threat kind of jump ball guy, big guy, 6'5", 240, big guy, strong guy, big, good hands for a big guy as well. He is a guy that Jordan Travis utilized a lot this year before his injury. Jump balls, he's going to win almost all of them, but he's also good after the catch, breaking tackles, and just a really good target for anybody who ends up drafting Keon Coleman. I think he'll probably be a mid to late first round pick. I have a lot of honorable mentions when it comes to wide receivers and pass catchers because I think there's a lot of this is a deep wide receiver class like it has been for the NFL for college football the last couple of years. Troy Franklin at Oregon probably needs to put on about 15, 20 pounds, but fast, good hands, good at least height as well, good ball skills. Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU, another just stud from LSU, really good hands, good ball skills, also fast as well. Ladd McConkey is your classic possession receiver. He's from Georgia, kind of your, like I said, your classic possession receiver like a Julian Edelman or a Wes Welker, but he's bigger and stronger and actually could probably run better routes on the outside as well. And then A.D. Mitchell from Texas, another guy who would probably be a top 5 receiver in most drafts, but it's just such a deep wide receiver draft that he goes a little bit further. But these guys could all sneak into the first round, but maybe be early second round picks, but could all be at least 2s to start their career and maybe all 1s at some point in their career as well in the NFL. And then finally, I'll go to the offensive line. And the offensive line, I thought there would be some interior guys here, but it's all tackles. And this is just like wide receiver and quarterback, if you want to talk about it. This is a deep offensive tackle and offensive line draft. Number 1 is Joe Alt from Notre Dame, just an absolute mauler and stud. Olu Fashanu is my number 2 offensive lineman. He's the offensive tackle from Penn State. Really good in the run game, solid in the pass game as well. Number 3, I'm probably going to mess up his name, but I have Talisi Fuaga, the offensive tackle from Oregon State. Really good in the run game. That's what Oregon State likes to do a lot. Probably needs to improve a little bit in the pass game and pass blocking, but big, strong guy, long arms. He's going to be a good tackle in the NFL as well. Number 4, I have J.C. Latham from Alabama. Definitely the best offensive lineman on Alabama, and that wasn't even a question. Not a great offensive line this year for Alabama, but J.C. Latham was the guy when you turn on the tape who stands out on their offensive line. Good in the run game and good in pass blocking as well. And then finally, we have Amarius Mims, the offensive tackle from Georgia. Just another Georgia player, another Georgia athlete. He was highly recruited, big, strong guy, very good in the run game, which Georgia likes to do a lot, but also good in the pass game, which they developed even more, especially under Carson Beck this last year. Amarius Mims is a good all-around tackle as well. Some honorable mentions, I have Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, a very good pass-blocking tackle. Troy Fatanu from Washington, a very good pass-blocking tackle, and that's what they did a lot at Washington. And then we have Jordan Morgan from Arizona, also a very good pass-blocking tackle and not bad in the run game either, because he was asked to do a lot of pass blocking at Arizona. That's what you see more on his tape. But those are my top 5 position players on the offensive side. I'll do my defensive side here in a couple of weeks. We have the combine this week, so you'll hear a lot about the draft and a lot of these players this week during the combine. But either way, that has been my show. Thank you for watching, and thank you to those DJ, Justin, Zach Law, and my wife Jennifer. Thank you for sending in those questions for me to answer on the show. I hope you like those answers, and if you don't, let me know. Either way, thank you for watching and listening to the show. This is, of course, Sports Talk on a Budget. You can find on YouTube if you prefer the video version. For the audio version, it's on all the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Thank you again for watching and listening, and have a great day.